Notes podcast. The season is over. The 2024-2025 campaign for the Utah Jazz has wrapped up. I'm Ben Anderson.
Chandler Holt.
While you're recording this on April 14th, the day after the season ended, Justin Zanik and Will Hardy talked to the media today over the last week. Been talking to players for their end-of-season media availability. Going to have those all posted up at KSLSports.com. In fact, we may just do one podcast here that has all of them back to back to back. If fans want that, it might just be an easy place to sit and listen to it. And if you're already listening to our podcast, just get them all put together, and it's not too much work for us. So that could be easy to do if fans are interested in that. Maybe we'll just have to do that. But as always, we will go through the week that was for the Utah Jazz. What a roller coaster. Yeah. No week that will be. That's no longer a problem for the Jazz. We will look at the final standings, what happened over the last week. Of course, the Jazz finishing with the worst record in the NBA. And then recap what we heard from Justin Zanik, Will Hardy, some of the players at the end of season availability. And then we will walk through our end of season awards. We've kind of done this throughout the year. We did it, 25 games in, 50 games in, or 40 games in, the three-quarter route, and then end of the year as well. So Get you updated on all of these spots. But most importantly, let's walk back through a crazy final week where you and I were both right and wrong about what happened at the end of the season. And you being right proved to be very beneficial for the Jazz.
So the Jazz started off their week by giving us a good scare and picking up a crazy overtime win over the Trailblazers, 133-126. And then they lost 145-111. I want to say something about this game. When they lost by 30-plus points to the Thunder without SGA, Chet, J-Dub, I was like, I think that they can do it. But then the Wizards scared us even more on the last day of the season. They were, up by 7 with 4 minutes to go?
Yep.
11-0 run, they're down, ends up Bub Carrington hitting a crazy game winner to win on the last day of the year, and then the Jazz fall to the Timberwolves 116-105 to secure the worst record in the NBA.
I thought after the Trailblazers win by the Jazz that was going to be the end of the season as far as they were going to be tied with the with the Wizards, because the Wizards had no reason to try and win another game.
Yep.
And once the Jazz caught up to them, they could just say, hey, look, that was in our best interest now to not win another game, lose out, finish tied for the worst record, and then hope that you win a coin toss, which will probably happen next week is when they do all these tiebreakers, and just say, hopefully you can't fall further than 5. And then, yes, to watch that, I watched most of that game yesterday morning, got up, and they're doing all the Eastern Conference windows, and I was watching the single worst game that was out there, the Wizards and the Heat. But, man, it came down to the final stretch, and they won. You had predicted last week that the Wizards were going to win a game, and I had predicted that both teams were going to lose out. Now, by losing out, the Jazz would have still had the worst record in the NBA. I thought they would get there. We were both right.
Yes.
The Jazz did finish with the worst record. I was wrong, though, that I thought both teams would lose out. I thought after beating the Trailblazers, that was going to be a tie. But it's why you can't predict anything in the NBA. Yes. And again, we've said this a lot. The players aren't tanking.
Yeah.
The players are out there trying to play. This is, if the Wizards fall to 6, it is purely based on what happened with the last 8 seconds of the season last night. It's why basketball is still exciting and why it's so hard to predict what's going to happen. But the Jazz do it. Most importantly, the Jazz finished with the worst record in the NBA. They did not reach my win total of 18. Man, let me pull it up. Did they lose? They had to lose something like 19 of their final 21 games?
Yeah, I think maybe even more than that.
Yeah, I guess when you add in the other two, 19 of their final 23.
21 of their last 23.
21 of their last 23. I think you're right. Yeah, trying to do the math in my head. Because they lost 10 straight, and then they lost 9 straight, so that's 19. And then, they lost their last 2 of the year. So 21 of their final 23 games.
That's how you do it.
We did our midseason check-in right around the end of February.
Yeah.
Not mid-season, but our three-quarter season check-in of are the Jazz going to finish with the worst record? And we went down the stretch because I remember we were getting ready for that Sunday Pelicans game at home that we said was going to be one of the most important games of the season. The Jazz lose 128-121, and their 2 wins the rest of the year. They beat Washington and they beat Portland. I think we had said they were going to win 3 or 4 games. They weren't going to get to 20. They only won 2. That's the type of lack of shame you have to finish with the worst record in the NBA. And honestly, I think for the first time, and I grew up in Utah. I've seen this team play my whole life. They finally kind of had the guts to just pull the plug entirely and say, we're going to be the worst. Yeah. We're going to be bad. The shame has to go out the window. If you want to get franchise-changing players at the top of the draft, you have to guarantee yourself the worst record, and they did that.
On March 3rd, the Jazz were 3.5 games behind the Wizards for the worst record in the NBA. On March 3rd. They were that far behind, which is crazy, but the Wizards also had that stretch where they won a lot of games. I think they won like 5 out of 10 or something in early March, and they got it done. But it's crazy that the Jazz went on that big of a losing streak, and like you said, shame out the window. It's what they had to do.
Yeah, and now they have to go on to the next spot, and Will Hardy talked about it today. You have to develop the player that you get, and Justin Zanik mentioned that. The lottery is the lottery. They don't know what they're going to get other than they're going to get a top 5 pick. It's on them to, whoever they get, turn that player into the best player they can. Regardless, though, this player figures to factor in to be one of the major pieces of the franchise going forward. Bigger than Taylor Hendricks, bigger than Cody Williams, probably honestly bigger than Lauri Markkanen, certainly bigger than Kyle Filipowski, Isaiah Collier, Keontae George, etc. Not that he's guaranteed to be better than those players, but the investment they made to get that guy for an entire season versus, you get to the trade deadline, you pull the plug and you tank, and that's how you get Taylor or you get Cody Williams. This was a season-long investment to get this type of player and figure out what other young players you have that might be worth keeping around to support this guy who's coming in. But it's big, and we're going to get to the mailbag coming up and a lot of questions about who the Jazz will look at in the top 5. And you know some of the names, and you probably don't know some of the names. Again, I am really early in on this draft process. Of course, I watched the tournament, so I've seen some of the guys, but I'm going to do a really deep dive as I do every year, and we'll have 25 write-ups of players.
Yeah, I was going to say, on KSLSports.com, Ben will be doing a lot of those write-ups, but also on this podcast for the next couple weeks, we're planning on doing a dive onto each of the top 5 prospects, basically leading up to the draft lottery, which is in 4 weeks. Do you want to do awards and then the media breakdown, or vice versa?
Yeah, quickly. We were talking about the Jazz and those since the end of March, or end of February, excuse me. February, let's just start with the Sunday, March 2nd, that game against the Pelicans. So beginning in March, the Jazz, we said, went 2-21 to close the year.
Yeah.
The Wizards won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games.
Wow.
They won 8 games. The Jazz were 5 games back at that point. They had to be because, if you win 6 games and you only beat them by 1, or I guess 4 games back, you're right, because it was 2 games, and they won 8. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So a 6-game difference over the last month and a half of the season for the Wizards to win all those games, including random ones. They back-to-back on the road at Detroit and at Denver was really a huge turning point. On my Twitter yesterday, I went through the 8 different buzzer beaters that had to happen this year for the Jazz to finish with the worst record. So quickly, again, to this point of you can work as hard as you want to lose as many games and rest players and tank and truly tank. And obviously the Jazz were tanking this year. There's no question about it. You still need a lot of luck to finish with the worst record. And it took the last shot of the Wizards season to guarantee the Jazz the worst record. So pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy they actually got there. Let's do the end of season awards really quickly. I don't want to harp too much on what I thought Will Hardy or Justin Zanik said.
Yeah.
I didn't actually think there was a lot that jumped out to me. There was one quote quickly that I thought Justin Zanik said that made me question Lauri Markkanen's future with the team. Now, Lauri in his end of season interview said he loves Utah. He loves being in Utah and seems to want to be here. Justin Zanik said, you like to have the partnership of understanding what's going on, which is A, that the Jazz are rebuilding, and Lauri understands that. He says, and while also being able to coach him, like he stayed involved. They said he doesn't have anything to do necessarily with our decisions as a group other than him expressing confidence in us to build a team. Now, in one way, I think you could interpret that as Lauri's not telling you what to do with the roster or saying you have to be better next year, otherwise I want to be traded. But at the same point, it also isn't we're building our roster with Lauri Markkanen in mind. Yeah. That's another way to interpret that. And honestly, I listened to it 4 or 5 times, and I'm not sure I could decipher exactly what Justin was saying.
Yeah. I think, if you're going to the first route of the 2 possibilities of what it can mean, Lauri isn't LeBron James. He isn't, constructing the roster around him. But I also see what you mean, that it could be, I don't know, we're not building this team around Lauri.
And I don't think they are.
Yes.
I don't think the Jazz are going to sacrifice decision-making to keep Lauri happy.
Yes.
I think they're still going to continue to take this long-term approach, and they feel that's the best route. And if Lauri's here and they don't get, a blow-your-socks-off offer for him, they'll gladly keep him.
Yeah.
And that's why they invested $200 million in him last year. But if the right opportunity presents itself, I still think the Jazz would move Lauri.
Yeah.
And that will be another big talking point this summer. Jazz are going to be really busy this summer.
I had one takeaway from both Zanik and Hardy.
Okay.
For Hardy, it was just big what he said every young player needs to work on. I don't know if we want to get into that or not. For Zanik, it was something that we have been asked a lot, and I think it's something that, ironically, we have reciprocated before Zanik even said it, which is that the Jazz don't have a concrete plan. Flexibility is their plan.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's a real advantage.
Yeah.
The flexibility is something teams don't have. The Phoenix Suns don't have it. Some of these bad teams do not have flexibility to fix their roster, and the Jazz have it.
Yeah.
And that's a bonus. Now, you've got to do something with it. You've got to make your team better using that flexibility, but you've got to use it at the right time.
Yes.
You know, we talked about not a joke last week, but I mentioned, like, the Jazz plausibly could take back Bradley Beal in a trade and basically trade their flexibility to the Suns that the Suns desperately need. But with that, you also say, give us your best young player, a Ryan Dunn or Oso Ighodaro, and also draft picks.
Yep.
Like that's the type of position the Jazz could put themselves in to get better this offseason while giving up some flexibility. But you can't do that if you don't have it.
Yes.
And they have that flexibility still. All right, let's take a quick break.
Okay.
When we come back, we will go through our end of season awards for the Utah Jazz, and then we will get into your mailbag questions. Stick around. More Jazz Notes coming up next. Welcome back to the Jazz Notes podcast. Ben Anderson, Chandler Holt. All right, it's time for our postseason awards. We're not going to make this super long, but obviously I think it's worth talking about.
Yeah.
But, a team that wins 17 games, who cares what the players did, honestly. But interesting, what were our preseason predictions? We can go our preseason predictions, and then we'll run through our postseason predictions.
Yes.
Or awards and results.
For MVP, both of us said Lauri Markkanen.
Okay.
For Defensive Player of the Year, both of us acknowledged that Walker was going to be that, but we decided to go with more of a quirky answer, I guess you could say. I picked Taylor Hendricks. You picked Cody Williams.
Yeah.
Rookie of the Year, both of us picked Cody Williams again. I had Collier 2, and you had Flip 2. Sixth Man of the Year, I said Jordan Clarkson. You said John Collins. Most Improved Player, I said Walker Kessler. You said Johnny Juzang. And for Clutch Player, both of us did Keontae. We just scratched Clutch Player from our end of season awards.
Well, when you lose every game, there's no clutch.
Yeah, exactly.
And we were wrong on basically everything.
Yeah.
So take these with a grain of salt when we do it again 6 months from now when we give you our preseason awards. Because our postseason awards actually, and we can just, do you want to just start with the top?
Yeah.
MVP, I went with Walker Kessler.
Okay.
And you went with Colin Sexton.
Yes, I wanted to note though that I decided to be quirky once again with my Colin Sexton pick. I do think Walker was the most valuable player for the Jazz. But the thing that I took into account was that the energy that Colin Sexton does, and it being a developmental year for the Jazz, I think that is huge for the young players to see that and maybe pick up on some of that.
Yeah, it was interesting. Colin was – I actually wasn't there for Colin's end of season media. Mm-hmm. It was happening during my show, so I need to go back and listen to all of it because they just haven't posted it until today. I didn't get the impression – there seemed to be some impression that maybe he was the least – committed, but I need to go back and listen to it. So take that with a grain of salt until you hear Colin say it yourself. But kind of the understanding is that Colin, when asked about would you want to be here if this team's going to win 17 games again next season, was maybe the less absolutely, I'm all in on Utah. Not that he doesn't like being a part of the Jazz, but I think he wants to win, and I totally get that. So I went with Walker.
Yeah.
Credit Colin Sexton. He ended up playing 63 games. Walker Kessler only played 58. Colin ended up averaging 18 points, 4 assists, a very normal Colin year. But he's a very good player. Walker, of course, had the double-double, led the league in offensive rebounding, led the league in block shots. Technically, he was second, but Victor Wembanyama doesn't qualify. And his 12.2 rebounds were a huge, huge plus.
Yes.
He would have led the NBA in field goal percentage had he not started jacking threes at the end of the season. So, anyways, good year from Walker.
Speaking of good year, both of us had him as our Defensive Player of the Year.
Don't need to talk about that. I mean, unfortunately, Cody was just not physically capable of playing defense, but Cody, I think, was the Jazz's best defensive rookie by a lot, even though Cody has such a long ways to go. And you picked Taylor, which is not a bad pick. He just got hurt his third game of the season, so he didn't get to play at all.
And then for Most Improved, you had John Collins. I put Walker Kessler and John Collins. I think I would err towards Walker Kessler. I also picked Walker as my preseason Most Improved, which is probably my best take.
Certainly, Walker from year 2 to what happened this year was a huge leap forward and means the most. His improvement means the most for the Jazz. I still think John Collins is going to opt into his contract. I asked him about it after the season. he wasn't totally committed that that's the point he's going to take or if he would sign an extension, but I think he's just going to opt into that $26 million deal, and that makes sense. I don't think he's getting that much money on the free agency market. But from what he looked like as dead money and bad money you were going to have to hold on to, it's like he's actually an asset.
Yeah.
So I think that was an improvement for the Jazz and gives them some flexibility this summer if they want to shop him. But as I picked John Collins, I do think Walker's improvement means more to the Utah Jazz.
And it was like John Collins did not have the best year in his first year with the Jazz, and then he was like 50, 40, 80, 85 for a lot of this year.
Had he not missed the last 25 games of the season, I might have said he was the Jazz MVP.
Yeah.
He just did not play at all over he missed the last 3 weeks because of the rolled ankle, but he was in and out of the lineup before that anyways. Had he played more, I think he would have been my MVP.
Rookie of the year, you had Kyle Filipowski, I had Isaiah Collier.
Both had really good years.
Yeah.
Both have followed it up with really nice seasons. Low expectations. I really liked Flip coming into the draft. I made no secret about that, and I just thought what a solid player he was going to be. He's better than I expected.
Yeah.
Because the three-point shooting has come along so quickly. The athleticism is translated really well. He might process the game as well as anybody on the Jazz, if not for Isaiah Collier.
Yeah.
Isaiah also really thinks the game really quickly, which is great. The Jazz don't have a lot of super high-Q NBA players on their roster, unfortunately. And that's just such a key thing with the NBA now. You look at the Thunder or you look at the Celtics, all those guys really know what's being asked of them, make great decisions quickly. Flip does that, and Isaiah does that. And that's a real plus for both of those guys. We both picked Cody, and that was way off. Cody just had a terrible year.
Yeah.
Cody had a really bad year. I'm not giving up on Cody if I'm a Jazz fan, but I think you're really happy that both Flip and Isaiah Collier seem to have hit, at least early on.
Yeah, and tying into Cody Williams really quick, Will Hardy, which I said was one of my takeaways from his media availability today, when he talked about what all the young players need to improve on, he pretty blatantly just said, Cody needs to work on his body and get more physical, which is something we've said. And of course, it's more than that, but it's you can't get to the other stuff before he does that.
And then he said shooting,
yeah,
which I think was a mailbag question we had. So shout out to whoever sent the mailbagging question last week, said, other than his body, what can Cody work on? And I said shooting, and that's what Will said today. It's you got to be able to have a reason to be on the floor.
Yeah.
But physically, he's not ready yet. So he's going to have to make huge improvements to his body in the summer.
Final award, Sixth Man of the Year. We both had Bryce Sensabaugh. Bryce Sensabaugh and Johnny Juzang are the only two players with more than 60 games and less than 20 starts.
Okay. So it was almost by default, but you know what? Bryce earned it.
Yeah.
Bryce's second half of the season was awesome.
Yes.
His post-All-Star break was really, really good.
Yeah.
To the point where you could hear it in Will Hardy's end of season award. And we are going to post them all at KSLSports.com. If we don't post them in this podcast form, you can go to KSLSports.com, click on the podcast tab, and you will find them there.
Yep.
The way Will Hardy talked about Bryce and the way Justin Zanik talked about Bryce, how tangible his skill set of being able to shoot and how much it makes him an obvious NBA player, which I think there are still questions about, is Keontae George a guy? Is he going to be on the team next year? Is he a long-term NBA player? Is Cody Williams a long-term NBA player? I don't think there's any question about Bryce. I think they are fully in on, believing Bryce is a player. In fact, other than Taylor, because he got hurt, among all the young players, excluding Walker Kessler, Bryce Sensabaugh might be the most obvious is coming back next year. I think they really like Bryce.
Yeah.
I think they really like what his season turned into, and rightfully so. I'll pull it up. His post-All-Star break, which is funny, he did not play the first game out of the All-Star break. I don't think he was hurt. I'll see if I can get his stats here. 47% from the floor, 47% from three. No coincidence, all of his shots are threes. But, he's a very consistent three-point shooter. 47% from three on 180 attempts is awesome. And that's over 27 games, meaning he's getting, see how threes a game. He's getting 7 threes up a game, and he's shooting 47%, averaging 14 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists. Maybe he's just a six man. Maybe he can move up and start a little bit if he can improve his body, which Will Hardy talked about as well, being able to play on both sides of the floor. But not a lot of criticism being leveled at Bryce as far as getting it. Bryce totally gets it. He knows what he is. He knows he's a shooter. He knows that's going to be his role. He understands I can dribble when the clock is winding down, but otherwise I'm a pure shooter. And you need those guys, and they're really valuable. And Bryce has been really valuable. He's had a great season.
Is it mailbag time?
Let's get the mailbag.
Okay. Starting in, I don't think we have some stuff on Blue Sky and a bunch of X replies.
No DMs.
Okay.
So I'll start on Blue Sky as always. I put these out on Twitter at Ben's Hoops and on Blue Sky at Ben's Hoops. You can also follow Chandler at Holt Sports. I ask for your questions for the mailbag. Just respond there, and we will get to them. Breeze say, let's say the Jazz get some bad luck and get the 5th pick. I know we got a lot of people asking this question, so Breeze, you just get credit for this one, but a lot of people asked. Let's say the Jazz get some bad luck and get the 5th pick. Dallas, who's desperate to generate some buzz in wake of the Luka trade, offer an unprotected 2026 pick, so next year, and their pick this year for the number 5 pick. Would you pull the trigger on that? Do we know where the Mavericks are drafting in this year? I haven't looked that up yet, but they're going to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Or at least they're in the play-in tournament, so they're right around 12 or 13. The answer is no.
Yes.
You have a top 5 pick. You have the bird in the hand. I get that another unprotected pick next year might be really exciting, and this is the Jazz falling to 5. Like, I get what you're saying. It's hard to get top 5 picks.
Yes.
And Dallas is not going to have any interest in having a top 5 pick next year, even though I get it's a loaded draft and supposed to be better than this year. Remember, though, last year we were talking about this draft being world beater, and now people are like, well, it's Cooper, and he's awesome, and then maybe Dylan Harper at 2, and after that there's a little bit of a drop-off. But last year at this point, everyone was like, this 05 or 2025 draft is going to be incredible. You've got to have a top 5 pick, but if you get top 5, Nolan Traore could be there. It's like, well, now Nolan Traore is going to be available at 21 where the Jazz draft.
Yes.
So even next year, we're talking about A.J. DeBonsa and Darren Peterson and Cam Boozer. It's like maybe 2 of those guys are good and one of them isn't, and then we're like, oh, well, it's really kind of 2 guys again, which is exactly how we're talking about this draft.
Yes.
So the answer to this question for me is no. Thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you. And plus, you already said this, the Mavericks are going to have Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving next year. It's going to be that pick is not going to be anything super special. And over the past couple of years, the Jazz have had an absolute massive selection of 8 to 35 picks already.
Right.
So you finally have your chance to be in the top 5. I think you have to take it. Even if you are down at 5, might as well take a shot on Trey Johnson or whoever is available there instead of just settling for a lower pick again.
And we will get to some of the names,
yes,
for sure. But no, in that specific scenario, I think the answer is no.
Yes.
Next question on Blue Sky, coming from Sammy Paradise. Have you done any work yet to see who the Jazz should target with the 21st pick? I have not, other than watching the tournament and kind of getting a sense of some of the names. And, of course, I've seen Yegor Demin at BYU. Again, I think I said this in a prior podcast. Listening to some podcasts around and draft people and talking to draft people, it does feel like the draft kind of hits a stride again around 20.
Okay.
So it's like really good with Cooper and maybe really good with the top 2 picks. Might flatten out a little bit. Outside of the top 4 or 5, I think it really flattens out. Like late lottery, it's just whatever. And then at 20, you get back to being like, well, that's a pretty normal group of players you select in the 20. And I think if you look back at what the Jazz have done with Kyle Filipowski, Isaiah Collier, and Bryce Sensabaugh all being picked 28 or later, that's pretty intriguing that the Jazz have identified talent well late in the first round.
Yeah.
And I think you could do the same thing with a player at 21. So I haven't yet, but I do get the sense from draft people that it's not a bad draft at that point. So Jazz, I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Jazz made it. I should also add Justin Zanik did, and this ties into our next question from Jake the Lynx, did say, we've got 4 picks, including 2 second-rounders. They have an ability to move around.
Yes.
So, and I suspect they will, because they're always active on draft
night. Any more Blue Sky?
Jake the Lynx says, now the entire season is over, how would you rank our 7 young players, Walker included, on how their how their long-term NBA career will be? And then question 2, the Jazz have 4 more picks, even if they keep 2, whose spots do they fill? And I think those tie up. Ranking the young players. We've done this as a draft before, which we could just go in that same order if you wanted to.
Sure.
If you were including Walker,
I'll
give you the number 1 pick. Who
Walker,
are you taking?
Kessler.
Walker 1. Number 2, I'm probably still taking Taylor.
Okay. What was did he say, based on how their NBA career will go?
How long their NBA career will be.
Okay. I might have to go with Bryce with my second pick.
Bryce has had a great year.
Yeah.
Bryce right now is the Jazz's best second-year player.
Yeah.
Now, Taylor was hurt all year.
Yeah.
So that takes him out of the running, but I think it's clear the pathway forward for Bryce makes a lot more sense than it does for Keontae. It's a lot clearer.
Yes.
How he becomes a staple NBA player. We've talked about how Keontae does it. He's just he has to fix a lot.
Yeah.
Last night was a great example of all the good and bad with Keontae George. He missed all of his threes. He took 8. Played 48 minutes. He also had 7 assists and 5 rebounds. I think you saw the pluses, and you also saw the things if that doesn't get better, he's probably not an NBA player.
Yeah.
So I will go with the 4th pick. I'll take Kyle Filipowski.
Okay.
Flip is 7 feet tall. He's going to make it.
Yes.
He's going to be in the NBA for a long time.
He's a skilled big at that too.
Yeah.
Like no matter what avenue he sort of leans into, whether it be a stretch big or a high post playmaker, whatever it is, he can thrive. And I agree with you. Create a long-term career out of it. It's so who's left? We have Isaiah Collier. We have Cody Williams.
And we have Keontae.
I'm gonna bet on Keontae here.
Okay.
I'm gonna take Keontae with this pick.
Keontae's ability to score gives you a chance.
Yes.
He's got to do it efficiently.
Yeah.
But guys who can score stick around in the NBA. And he can create a little bit. Like we said, his passing numbers are up, his rebounds are up. I'd go with Isaiah.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that leaves Cody last. But Cody had a really bad season, as we mentioned. Cody has the most work to catch up on to become an NBA player. He's got the longest road ahead of him. But as the former number 10 overall pick, the Jazz, I think, will give him some leeway, assuming he's on the roster next year.
Yeah. All right, over to X.
I think one last one.
Okay.
Sorry, got a lot on Blue Sky. A lot of people are interested, which we're always happy about. Alex, this draft feels like it has a clear top 4. If the Jazz land in the top 5, who should they pick? And again, I know we got a lot of these on Twitter as well.
Shout out to the great Bambus and Whit Owens Riley asked the same question. If the Jazz fall to 5, who are they looking at?
I would hesitate. I would take my foot off the accelerator a little bit on a clear top 4.
Yes.
It is Cooper 1. It's Dylan Harper 2. It may even open up a little bit after that. To be honest with you, you might get into team preference.
Yeah, but like just looking at the player and like ignoring, because of course we don't know the order yet. It is a sort of a flip flop between VJ Edgecombe and
Ace Bailey
at 3-4.
But I think Trey Johnson is working his way into this conversation, and I won't be surprised if, depending on how the lottery goes, if Kamen Malawash moves up, because teams like big guys who play defense, he does that, even though he had a really bad Final Four game. And then I wouldn't rule out a Con Knippel being in this conversation as well.
Okay.
And Jeremiah Fears from Oklahoma has skyrocketed up draft boards lately because he's 18. He reclassified, and he had some good moments as well. So there are going to be probably 8 names in conversation for those top 5 picks, and I think we just named them all. So Cooper, Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, VJ Edgecombe, and if I had to bet, I think that is the order the first 4 are going to go in, but things could change. Trey Johnson, Con Knippel, Jeremiah Fears, and Kamen Malawash.
I think that if VJ Edgecombe or Ace Bailey is available at 5, the Jazz take that. But if those 2 are gone, if the 1 through 4 is gone and the Jazz are at 5, who do you think team needs you're looking at?
Trey Johnson.
Trey Johnson.
I am really hesitant right now on like guys who don't play defense because you're seeing him just kind of ravage the Jazz roster.
Yes.
It makes it so hard to do anything productive and really feel like that's a long-term piece going forward. But he's 6'6", so he's 3 inches taller than Keontae George. He's younger. He's a much better scorer than Keontae was in college. Like he may have some of the same flaws defensively. His offense is way better.
Yeah.
Like he was a 20-point per game scorer as a freshman, which Keontae certainly was not. He's a big-time shot maker and creator. He's a real potential like offensive hub as a scorer in the backcourt, and the Jazz actually don't have that. They have concepts of it, and you see Keontae at his best, how valuable it can be. Keontae just doesn't do it consistently enough to be like, that's the guy going forward. So I think that's where Trey Johnson would step in, and Con Knippel, again, I think makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't think the Jazz would go Jeremiah Fears. I don't think the Jazz would go Kamen Malawash. So, another name to throw in, dark horse, is Derek Queen.
Okay.
Out of Maryland.
Yeah.
He's really intriguing, skilled big guy. Hit one of the few buzzer beaters that we saw in all of the NCAA tournament.
Next question from Dre Matashaw. In Zanik's end-of-season interview today, he highlighted the team's flexibility and that they wanted to be competitive and make deep playoff runs for a long time. Does that rule out trading for a guy like Giannis or somebody around 28+ that might bring short-term success, and does it hint toward another tanking season?
I know previously the Jazz had shown a little concern about trading for someone like DeJounte Murray because he's kind of that age, so kind of secretly old. And they had thought that in the past. Now, Giannis is a different conversation than DeJounte Murray.
Yeah.
Right? Like, Giannis is so good, yes, you just trade for him.
Yeah.
You don't care if he's 30 or 31 or 32, whatever he is. I think we do need to readjust how we think of guys' primes in the NBA, where we used to be like, well, it's 28 to 31. It's like, well, LeBron is 40 and is still one of the 10 best players in the NBA. And we are seeing Steph at 37 years old still play better. the way the guys take care of their bodies, as annoying as it is by missing games, is adding 3 and 4 years to their careers. It just is.
Yeah.
Kawhi is playing 47 minutes last night, and he's never healthy. But James Harden had 39 points last night. Some point, I think you bet that even at 28, 29, 30, you probably still have another 5 years of really high level ball.
Yeah.
So that's how I would look at it.
And plus, I think that the flexibility, of course, the Jazz are looking to build for the future, but part of that flexibility is being proactive when things become available. So like you said, if Giannis or one of these top 10, even 20, 25 players hit the market, you have the ability to make a competitive offer.
But I don't think you look at Paul George
True.
or certainly not Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
So there's some nuance there. It's certainly not oh yes, you're an all-star, you should come to Utah.
Yeah.
But I do think there are certainly 28, 29, 30 I think is still comfortably in the Jazz's wheelhouse.
Yes.
So
next up from Jimbo Slice, of the 30 assistant coaches, is there one solely dedicated to teaching defense? I'm tired of watching the other team score 140 points.
I think that's recognizable. I don't think they have a defensive coordinator the way Jeff Van Gundy is the Clippers defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Jazz are doing more individual coaches working with 3 and 4 guys for skill development.
Yeah.
So you have your guy that you work with. Now, they have coaches that, probably have some more of that responsibility necessarily, but no, I don't think they're at a point as a roster where it's you can even focus on that.
Yeah.
To be honest with you. They don't have a clearly identifiable scheme. And guess what? If you add Cooper Flagg, the scheme changes.
Exactly.
On both sides of the floor, including defensively. So, and then ideally you get Taylor Hendricks back and Cody's bigger and stronger and you're a much better defensive team next year. But no, I don't think they have a coordinator.
Yeah. Next up from Denny B. Karchner. How will the lottery outcome affect Jazz decision making? If we get Flagg, do we keep Lowry and build? If we don't, do we trade Lowry, etc.?
Justin Zanik did actually address this very issue, and I can pull up some of the things that he said about it, but kind of made it sound like it wasn't set in stone, whatever they do.
Yes.
Again, that goes back to the flexibility of, you got to see what happens and how they will fall out. I'm sure they have some more concrete plans if they get Cooper or if they fall to 5 and how that would approach.
But yeah, I just don't think, I think that no matter what happens, I've seen some people say if you get Cooper, do you trade Lowry and immediately hit another reset and try to get another pick? I think that no matter who the Jazz get in the draft, whether it's Flagg or whoever's at number 5 or whatever it is, I think that the Jazz will give it some run at the very least. See how Lowry and Cooper Flagg play together before making an official decision. But like you said, it all ties into not having a concrete plan.
This is what Justin Zanik said. He said, the lottery is the lottery. I mean, we've done everything we can to control where we are. I can't control what the results are on May 12th. I do notice if we select that selection that we're going to get in, I think I'm excited to add another good young player to our group, possibly 2, talking about the 21st overall pick, which we haven't mentioned. We should talk about that before the end of the show. Depends on if we have 2 firsts this year and 2 seconds, so that gives us some flexibility to maybe move around. We do have the capacity to add a couple of players to the draft with our roster, but you can bring, you guys can all bring your rabbit's foot and your lucky charms to see what happens, but we're going to be able to add a good player.
Yeah.
He basically non-answered or no commented, what do we do based on the lottery, speaking from Justin Zanik's perspective. Not really, again, not a real concrete decision one way or another. I'm sure they have ideas of a plan, concepts of a plan, some might say, yes. But they will, they'll adjust accordingly, you know, and yeah, you may have to go through Summer League. You may have to go through the Summer League here in Salt Lake. You may have to go through the Summer League in Vegas before you actually know what you have, and then work from there.
Tying into these interviews, Holly Hardy asks, what are some of the most interesting things you heard in the exit interviews?
Lowry being committed to Utah still certainly jumped out.
Yeah. Saying,
I love being in Utah. I truly think he wants to be here. Yeah. I think Lowry wants to be here. I don't think Lowry is going to go behind the scenes and ask for a trade a year after signing his deal. The other thing he mentioned that is kind of counterintuitive is that he likes playing with the Finnish national team leading up to a season because he feels like he gets real NBA reps, and he feels like his best summers and his best seasons have come right after finishing up national team play, where some guys you might think, they're going to be tired, they're going to be exhausted. Lowry really views it as an opportunity to gear up his game with live reps, so there's no he hits the ground running. There's no warm-up period once you get to the NBA. So he really likes that. I asked Taylor Hendricks. He said he has dunked the ball a few times already coming back from his broken leg, and it felt really good to do that. He's still taking it slow.
Yeah.
He's not going to be playing in Summer League at all, but they're hoping to have him back and ready to go in training camp. So that's a good sign. It's not like, well, maybe by the first game of the season he's starting to practice again. It sounds like they think he'll be fully ready to go for training camp, which I think is really important for him. Sadly, we didn't get to talk to Cody Williams.
Yeah.
Because he has mono, so he is cut off from society.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he even can talk. It sounds like he's having a crappy time.
Yeah.
Which honestly, I can't think of a worse scenario. Like, this is when you would have loved to have sent Cody on a 2-week trip to Cancun and then just come back and just live here and live in the gym. Not like, well, a month of mono. I've never had it, but it doesn't sound fun. You have no energy. And then maybe he'll take a trip after his condition clears up. And then it's like, okay, well, you've lost 2 weeks. You know what I mean? You've lost 3 weeks of an important summer where you've just got to get bigger and stronger. So I think some of that stuff was certainly interesting. Oh, and Bryce, we've talked about it a little bit. Bryce totally gets it. Like, so I'm not trying to run Keontae, but there were two really interesting. We kind of had Keontae and Bryce back to back. And we asked Bryce, like, what did you think about your season and like your future and what did you want to accomplish? And he's like, if you think of everybody in the NBA outside of the top 5 players in the league, you can tell me what their skill is. Like, I can tell you, like, when I know why that guy's in the NBA, I can say one thing about him. And he's like, for me, that is shooting. That's who I am. And that's my ticket to making it in the NBA. And it was like such a light bulb moment where it's like, we have all said, like, the best thing Bryce can do is less dribbling, less running around. Just shoot the ball. You're so good at it. Just do that. And it's like, it totally clicked for him. It totally gets it. We asked Keontae, like, what his goal was this year. He's like, I wanted to be respected. It's like, you're in the NBA. You're respected. Somebody used a near lottery pick on you.
Yeah.
You have a ton of respect. How about defense? How about, you know what I mean? How about, like, shot making? And I asked him about, becoming more efficient. Like, we asked those questions as well, but I was a little surprised that the respect thing was what he was looking for.
Yeah.
It's like, you got respect. You're here. You're in the NBA. Like, that's the respect. How do you punch your ticket to stick around now? And look, he got better this season. I'm not backing off of a lot of the things we've said about, like, I think he really got better. His left hand got a lot better. Some of his finishing got better. His assists got a lot better. His rebounding got better. The defense didn't get any better. The efficiency didn't get any better.
Yeah.
So talking about respect was a weird left to zag or a zig when a lot of people were zagging, where I think a lot of guys, it clicked in.
Yeah.
It really looked like it clicked in, and Keontae's answer was just a little Keontae for me. It was not like totally like the buy-in, understanding what's being asked of me, as much as it is like, I want people to know who I am.
Yeah.
It's like, oof, you might not be the guy on the team. So are you going to be able to play beyond that? And then the other thing quickly is just like, we've heard about Taylor looking bigger, looking better, like, and this is not a knock on Taylor. It could be, like, his acne's gone.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean that as a point of, like, you got to remember, you drafted basically a high school kid. Like, the kids who have still acne and are still, like, coming out of puberty, and now there's like a man there when you talk to him. Like, that is a grown man. He's out of his shell. He looks great physically. He's enormous. It's like, oh, this is a fully bloomed and developed person who's still going to, continue to sculpt his body, but, like, it looked like an adult versus the teenager that we were talking to when he got drafted a year and a half ago, that we didn't get a chance to talk too much because he spent the first half of the season in the G League, wrapped up the season quickly, did a little bit with Summer League last year, obviously, and then got hurt so early this year. So his transformation physically and emotionally has been very impressive.
Yeah. The thing for me from the Will Hardy's media, which is something that we have been asked a lot, and like all we can really see is the product, and they see a lot more of the behind the scenes stuff. So when he was asked what the young players need to improve on, and he gave sort of 1 to 3 things for all of them, he said Cody, like we said, body, physicality, and shooting. Isaiah, I like this. He said conditioning needs to be his superpower, and then refine the shooting.
Which, is really interesting. The superpower thing being your conditioning is the most Russell Westbrook answer of, like, how do you make him into a good player? Russell Westbrook is maybe the greatest athlete in NBA history.
Yeah.
And I know that might sound hyperbolic. I don't think it is.
Yeah.
He is, and I don't just mean jumping. I mean, his motor has never stopped.
Yep.
He's got the best motor I've ever seen, ever. And Isaiah's raw speed is stupid. He's so fast. If he can have that energy all game to where in the fourth quarter people are tired, and his superpower is I've got Russell Westbrook's motor or like that, yeah, he can be a really good NBA player.
Yeah. He said He basically pointed out defense for both Flip and Keontae. For Keontae, he said defense in a variety of ways. That's a quote. And then for Flip, he just said be solid and earlier.
Yeah, early I thought was a really good breakdown, which
Yes.
is I think Flip is an okay defensive player, but he has been able to shortcut defense throughout his whole life because he's so much bigger than everyone else in high school and college. You're not bigger than anyone in the NBA.
No.
So you've got to do your defense early.
Yes.
You've got to get in your spots early. You've got to beat guys to spots. And then you're not trying to fix it by blocking shots, which is, by the way, how you get into foul trouble.
Yeah.
And he largely avoided that this year, which was a promising development.
I do agree with you, though, that one of the biggest takeaways from the media availability was how much they love Bryce. Because when he asked about Bryce, he said body is the only priority. And he said that ties in with athleticism and defense, which allows his shooting to shine.
But they said, like, when he shoots, it goes in.
Yeah.
And that's true.
Yeah.
When he shoots, it goes in. And there is not a more important skill in the NBA than shooting. I know it's boring, but you shoot 47% from three. Like, he hit one yesterday in Minnesota where, like, I don't know who it was. It was just draped on him.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I'm just going to put it up. And early in the year or last year, you'd have been like, woof, that's a guy who has no sense of what the NBA is about. And those go in so often now, you're like, that dude totally knows what his role is.
Yeah.
He knows he can make threes on anybody at any given time. So you're right. He said his body was his most important thing, which is good because Bryce is not like sloppy body, bad body guy. It just can get better.
Yes.
Bryce's maturity is just, it's really sparked. It's been really interesting to watch. He had a great year. He had a really huge year for the Jazz.
Okay. Next up, moving on to a question from Jazz Time Jones. If you were the GM, do you trade pick 21 or draft? You can only play so many young guys. What would Ben do?
I'm drafting again.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'm probably making room on my roster with other young guys to bring in another 21. You can't have 8 22 and under guys. Yeah. You know, we've graduated Walker out of the young guy conversation. I don't think you can have 8 of those guys.
Yeah.
So, someone's got to take someone's spot. If I had to bet now, it would be Keontae.
Okay.
I would think of among the young players, I think Keontae's probably the most likely to get moved.
Okay.
Can aggregate that? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Justin Zanik said he was going to be here all summer. So it's not like the Jazz just said, Keontae, go do whatever you want this summer. We're going to find a new spot for you. I still think they're invested on keeping him around and developing him. But among just like the likely, like, again, I don't think Cody has any value. I don't think Taylor has the value right now coming off an injury. Flip, Isaiah, and Bryce are all really good. Isaiah might be the second most likely to move, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because you have a chance of drafting Dylan Harper. So if you draft Dylan Harper number 2 overall, you might move off of Isaiah.
Yeah.
But even then, maybe Isaiah's just your backup point guard and Dylan Harper is your starter. So it's hard to bet on who that would be. Keontae seems to make the most sense, though, just from like they're probably going to draft over top of him regardless.
Yeah.
And he's a 6th man, right? They've already moved him to a bench full time. So we don't know like what the next step would be for him.
Next question from Brandon Brinton. Would any team consider trading the number 1 pick if the Jazz don't get it? What would it cost if the Jazz had the 4th pick to move up? Would it be worth it? Would our pick plus all future Cavs and Wolves pick do it? Would that be worth it to end the tank sooner?
The Jazz don't have the things to do it.
Yeah.
They don't have the arsenal to do it. If you have Luka, if you have Giannis, maybe, Anthony Edwards, if you have one of those guys, yes, you can make that trade. But there's like 3 of those guys.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder if whoever got the number 1 overall pick, if they would take Giannis or not. They might say no.
Yeah.
Because Giannis is older. Again, not older, but he's 30. He's had some knee issues. He's had calf issues now. Like, there's kind of always a thing with Giannis. Luckily, he's healthy this year. But there's kind of always something with his body. You would do it for Jokic. Certainly, you would do it for Jokic.
Yeah.
But I think that might be it. It might be like Jokic, Anthony Edwards, Luka. There's no one in last year's draft, certainly.
Yeah.
So I think that's who it is.
Yeah.
Jazz don't have the arsenal to do it or the weapons to do it. They do. They could maybe go from like 5 to 3. I don't know if you can even get to 2. You might be able to, but you might be able to get up to 3, which is similar to what the Jazz did in the Darren Williams draft.
Yeah.
They traded from 6 up to 3, I think is what it was. I think I could see something like that. And then I think you're only going from 5. So a team that says Trey Johnson's our guy. We love Trey Johnson. He's going to be there at 5. We don't want to take a chance on Ace Bailey, and we don't think VJH comes the real deal. We'll trade back. I could see that. I could see that being a possibility.
Next question from Rhino. Probably not a fair question to ask, but what do you anticipate the general reaction of the fan base to be if the Jazz don't land a top 2 pick and DC or Charlotte does? Of course, there's going to be a lot of disappointment. But at the same time, I've seen a lot of Jazz fans being like, I'm preparing to not get the number one pick.
I think there's a lot of resignation that, again, you have a 48% chance of it being the 5th pick.
Yes.
It's the most likely of the picks. Now, you're more likely to end up with top 4, but only just barely.
Yeah.
52% to 48% chance. So it's only just barely. But I do think a lot of people see that number and are realistic about it. But that doesn't mean Twitter won't be an absolute nightmare on May 12th if the Jazz do anything but get a top 2 pick. And really, some of them even a number 1 pick. Some fans will be a little unrealistic and saying, like, that was a failure. But, yeah, if it goes to 5, fans are going to be pretty incensed.
Yes.
And, again, as we've talked about, I think there's probably a pretty clear top 3. I think Ace Bailey is probably going to separate himself in draft workouts by being 6'10" and shoot the heck out of the ball in an open gym. I think he's going to look awesome.
Yeah.
I think we might separate out a clear top 3 and maybe even a top 4 with VJ Edgecombe. In reality, it probably is a little bit flatter between 3 and 5 or 3 and 6 than we're going to think about once we get to draft night, just because I've seen these so often, and that tends to be what happens.
I think it's kind of funny that they mentioned how mad would they be if DC or Charlotte gets it. Like, putting myself in the total shoes of a Jazz fan, like, I would be much more upset if Philadelphia got it or New Orleans or one of the other teams. But the 2 teams that were right with you in the tank race, I feel like that's like the easiest sort of thing to accept.
And you know what what you don't want is the number 9 team, which is like, you were that last year, you couldn't move up, or the 8 team last year, you could never move up. It happened this season. What I would say is, if the Jazz don't win the number 1 overall pick, hope he goes to Charlotte.
Yeah.
Hope he goes to the East. The West sucks.
Yeah.
The West is so hard. Look at the Western Conference play-in versus the Eastern Conference play-in right now. Like, the Western Conference play-in has the Golden State Warriors that have Steph, Jimmy Butler, and Draymond. Like, legit all-NBA first-team member, probably in Steph, if not he's second team.
Yeah.
Jimmy Butler, who's been awesome after the Heat trade and has been the best player on the finals team in the last 4 years. And Draymond Green, who I think is going to win Defensive Player of the Year, and they're in the play-in. Yeah. And they have a whole system. And Memphis has Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr., who's the other maybe DPOY candidate, and can't make it to the guaranteed playoffs. So, send talent east. Yeah. That's what you need to have happen.
Okay, moving on. Next question from Brad Peterson. The Jazz seem to have developed around 10 to 12 non-starter players. How do the Jazz get value out of this glut?
Some of them will just naturally develop.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I don't know if there's like a real strong push to make all these crazy moves to like salvage value out of it. Some of it will just sort itself out.
Yeah.
In all honesty, and like, I know it sounds a little bit boring. There's just value in guys coming off the books. Yeah. At some point, like guys expiring. John Collins just expiring after next year if he's still on the roster. Like. So you cleared $26 million off your roster. Like, there's value to that, actually, instead of just saying, like, how do we keep that specific asset alive? And I know I've talked a lot about having assets and not losing them for nothing. I think some of that, when it's a $26 million contract, just freeing up money on the books is actually a good thing for the team. Yes. If that's the direction they go.
No, I agree with you. I think that some of these younger players will blossom into at least starter quality, if not actually being that. And then others will eventually just move on.
But some of these guys are also going to develop into starting level players.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
Maybe it is Bryce, or it's Taylor, or it's Kyle, Yeah. One of the weird things, again, what's hard to break down about the Jazz this year is Lowry starts on 30 NBA teams. John Collins is a top 6 or 7 player on 30 NBA teams. Walker is a top 6 or 7 player on 30 NBA teams and starts on 25 NBA teams. Yeah. So much of what the Jazz did was artificial this year to tank because they actually have some good players. Yeah. They actually have guys here who can play in the NBA, and they just rested them, benched them, played them somewhat fewer minutes, not a ton fewer minutes, but Colin Sexton is like a top 6 guy on all 30 teams in the NBA. So it's hard to know, actually, is Kyle Filipowski a starting level player? He didn't get the opportunity, actually, despite the fact that he played the 5th most minutes. He's still behind Lowry and John. So there's just not a spot for him. Yeah. And fans are going to have the same question about Taylor Hendricks next year if Lowry and John are back and Walker's back. It's like, where does he play? It's like he would start on a lot of teams as a young player. He would start on the Wizards right now. He'd start on the Hornets right now. The Jazz have all of these good players still on their team that are, have value in the NBA. that they're sticking with. It's just hard. The glut is self-created. It's not, they accidentally ended up with 10 non-starters. Like, it's a little bit of a facade that these guys are non-starters just because they have actual starters in front of them that they aren't winning with, and they're not winning with on purpose.
If the Jazz roll out their best product, they're beating the Wizards and the Hornets by 20 plus points.
I think that's accurate.
Yeah, and then if you go down the next team that's closest to what the Jazz have done this year is maybe like the Pelicans and the Sixers, who had their own injury struggles, and it's like the Jazz did it better. They have 4 less wins and 7 less wins than those teams.
Yeah. So it's hard. I guess disagree with the premise that there's 10 or 12 non-starters on the team. But I absolutely get why you asked the question, and it's a real one. It's a real part of it. And look, some of them are just going to disappear. Some of the players are just going to wash out and just be, they just didn't make it.
Yeah.
And I think the Jazz will actually be okay with that. It's why you acquire whatever it was, 13 first-round draft picks, and you've made 5 of them already, not including Kyle Filipowski, a second-round pick, and you have so many more coming up still. It's like people are going to take people's spots. This is a real competition to get to the top and keep the best of the best, and that's what they're trying to do.
Next question from Dugan, kind of related, also not related. I know you haven't started your draft prep, but who are some guys you are most excited to dig into outside of the consensus top 4?
Derek Queen, who I mentioned, I think actually has a chance to work himself in to be like the 5th player in the draft because there's not a lot of size. And as we look at with Kyle Filipowski, like big skilled guys are really valuable.
Yeah.
So that's a name I would certainly keep an eye on. I do want to watch the Duke guys a little bit more, not Malawash necessarily, but Con Knipple. I want to keep an eye on him. I need to watch Asa Newell with Georgia. I need to see him. Kasparis Yakashonis, I want to watch a lot of. I need to watch Michigan State so I can see Jace Richardson. Like, there's a lot. Honestly, I need to watch all of these guys. And it's the nice thing is some of those guys aren't going to be in unless if the Jazz get a top 2 pick. Like, I'm not going to look into those guys. This is the truth. I'm not.
Yeah.
Because it's a waste of my time.
Yeah.
I will start looking more at the guys who are projected to go maybe 17 to 30. And then it's like, I want to watch Nick Clifford at Colorado State.
Yeah.
I want to watch him really closely. I think that's the type of guy who really makes sense as an older guard who, like, if you're talking about whose job does he take, like, that's the guy who comes in and takes Keontae's job next year.
Yeah.
Because he's older than Keontae right now. He's developed in college, had a great season this year, made a real push for Colorado State late in the Mountain West Conference season, was awesome, and can probably do a lot of the things Keontae does, but does them day one already better, even though he's a little bit older, but he just like doesn't need as much coaching.
Yeah.
So those types of guys, Walter Clayton at Florida, who made the great run to lead them to the national championship and win most outstanding player. Those are some of the names I'd keep an eye
on. All right. I think that is it for the mailbag. Like we said earlier in the show, the NBA draft lottery is 4 weeks from today. Leading up, we're still going to be doing our weekly episodes. We're going to do sort of looking back a little bit more on the Jazz season. We're going to do some grading / recapping years for some of the players, and then also previewing some of the prospects who should be in that top 5 range. I believe we're doing Cooper Flagg next week.
We're gonna. So I will start my deep dive. I'm going to watch a handful of games of Cooper and really get a breakdown of what he does and doesn't do, and we will talk about him and specifically how he would fit on the Jazz and you know, what he would change. And then the week after that we'll probably do the Rutgers guys. The week after that we'll probably do VJ Edgecombe. The week after that is the lottery.
Yes.
So we are 4 weeks today from the lottery.
We will more information on this as it gets closer, but I believe we are going to do a podcast instead of around the 1 to 4 p.m. that we do it now. We're going to do a late episode on the day of the draft lottery, sort of just a recap.
Doesn't make sense to record before the lottery and have a 3-hour shelf life.
Yeah.
Way better to do it after. So we will probably do that. Quickly, one thing we didn't address, which we should have in because we didn't really do news and notes. Jazz don't have any tiebreakers they're worried about in the first round. That's what's crazy. I was almost positive that we weren't going to know the status of the Jazz's first round draft picks until next week when the NBA holds its tiebreakers. Now, we won't know the Jazz's top 5 pick until we actually get to the lottery on May 12th, like we're talking about. But I thought there was an extremely high likelihood that the 21st pick could be somewhere between 20 and 24, and we wouldn't know until the NBA holds the coin toss coming up next week. And randomly, the Timberwolves was the only team that finished with 49 wins. So that's really nice. You just know that they're 21. Second-round picks, you don't know, right around where they're going to be. It's like 41 or 42, and then either 52 to 55.
Yeah.
But second-round picks at that point, who cares?
Yeah.
But the first-round picks, knowing but you're going to be top 5 and 21, I think is actually a kind of a nice boost for the Jazz.
Definitely.
Certainly easy to talk about.
Yes.
So we can do that. So I don't have to worry about watching coin tosses, which is some of my least favorite part of the offseason. Because it's like that, all of the season comes down to a coin toss, whether you're going to draft like a difference of 3 or 4 spots. Now, that is what the lottery does.
Yeah.
But at least you know your top 5. So anyways, all right, that's it. We will be back with you again next week. Yeah, bigger deep dive on Cooper Flagg and maybe some more fallout from the end of the season and see what the Jazz do with some of these end-of-season interviews. We will post them at KSLSports.com. If not here, you can find them, and we'll be back with you next week.